All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Chase. If you're new here, my name is Christian Dyer. I'm a professional and international rugby player, a podcast host, and something that I like to call myself a chief dream officer because I really believe no dream is too big to chase, and I'm doing everything in my power and using my platform to prove that, and coupled with the likes of all the incredible guests that we have had on the show, including today's. And today's special guest has such a cool and unique story and is changing people's lives physically and mentally and creating a lifestyle and a community that's so inspiring. A true ambassador for living life and maximizing our time on earth. Ryan Duey, welcome, brother.
Dude, one hell of an intro. I appreciate that, man.
No, it's you earned that one.
Thank you. Man, that all right, let's see if I live up to that here.
Let's roll with it. So I think your name is often attached, especially nowadays, to kind of cold plunging and health and wellness. But I want to hear the origin story of Ryan Duey.
Yeah, it's funny, the name attachment of like, now I'm like the cold plunge guy. That wasn't 5 years ago. I was the float tank guy. My first business I started was float therapy, float spas. So it's funny to hear that now of like the connotation. And I remember 5 years ago, it was like fun at the beginning to be the float tank guy. And I was like, I don't want to be that the rest of my life. And now I'm something different. But origin story, man, I would say, I always try and bundle that down of like, what is the biggest, like the top 5% impactful things in my life. And like maybe the 5% most challenging things in my life that I think form my identity. I think, for me, I think a lot starts with an accident that I had 10 years ago. Just done a quick origin. It was a big accident that I had in Thailand, kind of shifted my whole life into what I wanted to go after. I was in a good place, but this was just an accelerant of, like your podcast, Chasing Your Dreams. Like, what is the actual dream that I want to go do? And it's not a dream anymore. Like, let's take the actual steps right now and quit letting that be some far off thing into the future. So I was in a really bad accident in Thailand. Was in the hospital for about 3 weeks out there. One of those near-death experiences. And from there, it took me on more of a personal inward journey to start, which led to the inside of the float tank, which took me down to the jungles of Peru to work with ayahuasca. And then that catapulted into like me starting my first business, which was Capital Floats. And I think each piece has just kind of played its role to where we are today with Plunge being my focus. It's not just Plunge. I'm always big that like, I'm not one tool is the end all to be all. And this is like the most important thing. It's more of a comprehensive piece to it. And cold plunging is kind of the new chapter in the story I'm just big into health and wellness. I'm big into, more just like living not an optimized life, but like a fulfilled, happy life, whatever that looks like. So kind of a jumbled way of putting it all together, but I think that sums it up a bit.
So then before that accident, before you go to Thailand, do you remember kind of like what the trajectory of your life was looking like?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Not great. It was awesome. It fit. I lived in San Francisco. I worked in professional soccer for the San Jose Earthquakes in Major League Soccer. It was a job that I really enjoyed. Chasing something that mattered to me. Like grew up playing soccer, looked at that as like this real opportunity, an emerging sport. You get very few moments in life when you kind of get these windows when you can be a part of something. And I felt like that for soccer. So it was great.
Yeah.
However, there was like the accident, what brought forth was like, what is the actual thing that I want to do? I think there was like still a twinge of like what I'm supposed to do that was living in my life at that time. And, it was like, truly, it was going to the jungle and drinking ayahuasca, which is like, I don't know, everyone knows it's a psychedelic it's a psychedelic medicine. This is back in 2012. It was not a commonplace thing. I didn't know anyone that had ever done it, but it was so deep inside of me that I wanted to do it. I had curiosity for it. I was enthralled with hearing some of the impacts it had had on people's lives. And I was so deeply curious, but it was such a far off thing. Like that's almost too wild for my existence. And, I think that was what, like, you want to do that. Like, let's get really honest. Laying in that hospital bed for 3 weeks, it was like, I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink. I was just on an IV. You just get a lot of time to be like, when you get out of here, what are you going to do? Like, I would imagine it's something in line when someone's like in prison and you like get focused. Like, these are some people that come out and there's like, I cherish life. I had like the smallest dose of that, but I came out and it was like, okay, what are you going to go do? And it was like action from that moment on. So I think that's what it did. It accelerated what I actually want to do in life.
And can you sum it up? What you want to do in life?
What I want to do.
What's the mission?
Man, the mission changes. I'll say that. I think right now it's a phrase that has been like deeply focused on me is this term, all boats rise, and just like making win-win relationships and like raising up anyone that's in my ether. I've tasted some success right now, and there's still a long way I want to go to what I would consider like having like, there's more things I want to achieve. Absolutely. But equally, can I do it with the people around me? And can I look around and everyone's like, I thrived as well. So I think that's a massive mission of mine. And I just want to, like, I'm really big into like fun, like life being fun. I think there's been a bit of over the last few years, like life's gotten really heavy, and I get it. There's a lot going on in the world, but it's a very simple term. But if we could bring a little more fun to our life, and that's something I try and share. It's something I try and bring into our business. It's something I bring into all my relationships. Are we having fun? Is there a taste of fun in this? And if that's not present, then like really evaluating what are we doing here? So I think it's like mixing those two things together, like really bringing win-win relationships and just, having some fun in what we're doing.
I've seen on YouTube actually the past couple of weeks it's popped up, but Aubrey Marcus's documentaries on ayahuasca. And I know Aubrey uses the cold plunge. I've seen some of the footage around that, but kind of the way he talks about it is how it changed his perception from inwards to outwards. And did you ever like experience that? How, life can become so much more fulfilling when you almost are matching what you're good at, what you're passionate about, but you're matching that in the service of others. I've read and heard some of the things he's talked about, how that's kind of when he began living. Yeah,
I think, for ayahuasca, for me, it's been a consistent tool I've worked in, and it's been different times. I think it's kind of a dance. Sometimes it's like it is kind of about me, and that's okay, and I got to work on that. And then there's times that it is like much more about the group level and about community and having. And I do think that is like the ultimate, when we can be in that space where it's about the group. And when I say group, that group can be whatever size you name. The internalized problems. It's honestly a hack to get past your personal, like things that I get consumed in my life. I get to solve bigger problems, and naturally it's just going to solve the problem that was there, but I get to go solve a bigger problem. My first time drinking ayahuasca, it was actually much more of it was a lot of my immediate. It was about me, but a very immediate situation. A lot of my parental, like my parents, my relationships with them, dynamics there. I did go down thinking I was going to quit my job and go start a float spa. That was like what I thought I was going to the jungle to do. And it was like, dude, that's not what we're working on here. Like that. It was like it's very much like you're playing that's a smaller game than what we're working on here. That will come. The float spa is a byproduct of what does if you do these if we make these adjustments in your life, if you start to understand yourself a little bit better, like in turn understanding my parents a little bit better, which helped me, myself, like all the confidence, all the things, like let's work on those things, and then a float spa could be the thing. Like that's just becomes the byproduct of working on those things. So yeah, I definitely resonate with that. Into like, I think our minds, we get to touch 5% of really what's going on and driving our show. Like the conscious mind's about 5%, and then 95% is really maneuvering, I think, our society. And I think it's incredible that we've created the world we've created with that in place. Like we have so many unconscious behaviors that we're just doing constantly. And I think the goal is that how do we bring some of this unconscious into the conscious? And I think ayahuasca and psychedelics it's not the ultimate tool for it. It's not the only tool for it, but it is a tool to bring some of that stuff up into our awareness. And then we have choice to, do I want to integrate this? Do I actually want to start working on this? Like it doesn't just switch and like, oh, I'm changed. Now there's actual, it's challenging when we get confronted with maybe a behavior or a pattern that we weren't quite aware of, a blind spot that didn't exist in our kind of conscious mind. And I think, psychedelics does do that. It does bring it up. It gives us the opportunity to see the behavior. And then from there, we can start making the adjustments. And that's when to me, the challenging work comes of, it's one thing to learn about it. It's another thing to actually make the change in our life.
Are there other tools other than resorting to, say, the psilocybins, the ayahuascas? Because there's there's a lot of people in the world who may not want to resort to that extreme side of the table. Are there other tools that you found or you've read or you've heard that can help confront some of those?
Totally. I mean, I think I've done like self-development courses, like, for me, like Landmark was a massive development tool for myself. With something we do with our company, a lot of people in our company go through it. It's another framework to kind of understand ourselves. So I think there's self-development courses. There's just, I think surrounding yourself with the 5 people that you admire, like really evaluating who am I spending my time with. Like we are social creatures. Like we will mimic and behave like those around us. And I guarantee if I look to see who you're hanging out with, there's a good chance I can say what the trajectory of what's going on with you. So I think that's like another way that we can evaluate there. I think, to me, it's like micro wins too. It's why I think cold plunging is a part of it. It's like, it's one piece to it. You just do these little acts. Cold plunging is not going to transform you. Like I know a lot of people that cold plunge that aren't people that I would, aren't the greatest people, but it's a piece. It's a piece that it gives you another opportunity to kind of grow and expand. I mean, there's, for me, I also have the opportunity. I work with coaches that's not available to everyone, but that's, it's ultimately the core of this whole thing is, can I break myself down to not view myself as the behavior? And it's not a bypass. It's not like getting myself out of being accountable to it. But by doing that, I don't take it as personally, and then I can make the adjustment. So it's like, especially like with the coaches that I work with, it's like, I can get the behavior relayed back to me, and I don't take it as defensive. Like, no, it's why I do it. I don't defend it. It's like, I can just see it. And again, I'm not great at this. This is what I'm developing for. But I think that is like the ultimate, really at the core of all this stuff that we do. Like, can we separate ourselves from the behavior, and then allows us some time to actually transform it in our life and not make it just about me. It's more of, I need to change the behavior as opposed to I am that behavior.
I think that opens up a discussion, but it's tough because a lot of people take it almost as criticism, right? Totally. Rather than just accepting it for what it is and realizing it's not right or wrong. It's just how it is. And I think once you can take that subjective lens away and start looking at it from more of an objective lens, then it's like, all right, what are the processes that I need to put in place, or the behaviors that need to change, or the systems I need to put in place to then start making improvements? Because that's the game. That's what we're going for. It's not taking a stab at somebody's character or anything.
Yeah, and I think that's the hardest thing. I mean, we are human. We all have we all are operating from the same system, and we have a reflective mind. We have an ego, which creates an identity. We're a very unique species that way. That, from what we can tell, like, we're really one of the only players on the planet that has that. And there's power to that. And then there's, like you said, there's ways that we kind of convolute that. And so I think it is like, that is the game. Like, can we work towards that? And we try and celebrate it at the company of, like, there are triggers to know that you're in it. And there's, like, when we get overly defensive, or when we, like, almost have breakdowns. Like, breakdowns to me are like such a good signal that we're in a good spot. like when an employee like has a breakdown, it's like, okay, cool. Can we just acknowledge? I get it. There's a lot going on right here. It's a triggered moment, but like you're at your edge. We're at our edge. Like we're in an uncomfortable zone where something can get, this is where the pattern gets changed. The pattern doesn't get changed when things are good. That's like the time to celebrate. That's like the time to be like, oh, we're good.
Yeah.
You have to get into an uncomfortable, like almost a true breakdown moment to have the opportunity to change a behavior. So it's like the more we can, oh, cool, that's happening right now. Like for a split second, a minute, 5 minutes, whatever, can I recognize this is happening? And then go back into it. There's still a lot of emotion to that. It's not diminishing those emotions, but I think it is the game. It is the ultimate, like those that are willing to, and you see I'm always amazed with, you watch people get interviewed, or you see someone that you would view, they're just willing to be like wrong. And it's like, and they're just off it immediately. And they're just on to the, like, oh, interesting. And then they just change, the thought process change. And they move on. They're not stuck into, I needed to prove why I thought that way. It's like, cool, new piece of information. I'm on to the next, and then they get to go solve that. I think that's I'm still figuring out what are the greatest tools for that, but I think that is, that's the accelerant in life. That's between good and
man. And some of the best athletes, best competitors, the best people I know in this world, they just have this confidence level about them to get it wrong. That's so unmatched.
Yep.
And then, I worked with a sports psychologist, last year talking through some of my performance anxiety, and it was reframing the way that I perceive failure and just almost looking at it as like a data point on my journey, and understand that, number one, success is never linear. And number two, every single person in this world is going to fail. So why try to like steer away from that? Just accept it for what it is, go through it, and figure out how you can get it right the next time. And once I kind of wrap my brain around that, I think it took away so much pressure and anxiety from my life.
I think you nailed the key. It's like success is a perspective. That's just it's a viewpoint. It's not some universal truth. But then finding, like, making sure as long as you're enjoying the journey, like then, success can play out. And like, that's a moment I get to just say I succeeded or I failed. Like, it's failure is just, to me, lack of like a bigger picture perspective. It's we're making that moment to be the failure. And again, I do it. I have moments where I'm like, fuck, I failed. But then as you get more data,
we're all guilty of it.
Yeah, you can look back and like, man, that failure was incredible. Like that failure was, like you said, it's data. It's a feedback that I got to expand. And it's, again, we're not talking about the craziest stuff here, but it is so crucial to dig into it and find that and like understand our kind of normal as a human, like our mechanisms and how we operate.
Yeah, no kidding. That was so good. But let's get into the meat and potatoes of all this, which is getting cold, the cold plunge. And so I listened, or I read that you saw an episode on Vice, by Wim Hoff, and maybe that was the catalyst to this whole, I guess, journey in the company. Can you touch on that and what sparked this whole thing?
Yeah, so you're referring to I saw it in 2015. I think Vice had come out with it a year or two before. It was like the first real main piece on Wim Hoff. Blew my mind. It was like, who is this human? Like, just an incredible, someone that just was ridiculed, called crazy, people laughed at. Just this is, he is an eccentric guy, but these eccentric people are the people that move society forward. And he was that. And I was just so deeply touched, moved, and inspired by him. And so that was like the first introduction of like intentionally getting cold. Like, I think I had done it for sports back in the day, but it was like, I didn't quite understand it. I would suffer through it. I would be like, I just have to do it to make my muscles better. And Wim was like just a much more expansive view onto it. So I would say that was a start. And then I started getting into cold water in general. I loved it. I loved it more I had some immune system issues back in 2017. And I incorporated cold into my routine. I got like 6 colds in 6 months. I was like, why am I getting sick all the time? Well, I started incorporating breath work and cold water therapy. That went away. So I was like, okay, cool, real power here. And then I just loved as you know, it's like the feeling, like the invigoration, like coming out. I was like, what is going on here? So that was like the excitement of it. And I think like Mike, my co-founder with Plunge, he owns float spas too. And so we separate businesses, but that was kind of our thing. He was in the Bay Area. I was up in Sacramento. We became buds. And then the pandemic hit. And, one of these moments where just curveball in life, we're all dealing with it, shut our businesses down in California. And we, gave us some time. Like we were talking off there, he moved up to Sierra Oaks in Sacramento randomly out from the Bay Area. And we just had some time. We just started developing a cold plunge in his garage. He got it off the ground. And then he was like, yeah, what do you think, man? You think we should like sell some of these? And it was kind of like, we were super passionate about it. We were solving our own problem of like, how do we make something at our house that we feel is more affordable, but also like looks really cool than what's out there. And, so we just decided like, cool, let's email our float spas and we'll say, hey, we're going to sell 20 of these. Who wants to buy one? And from there it was, it really took off. We had some good interest from the first customers or from our email list. I'm like, yeah, shoot, I would love one. Like, and we just kind of made to order and then we delivered to their house. But then it ballooned into, our SEO. The company's called Plunge, but our domain name is thecoldplunge.com. And so we ranked really high on Google super quick. And so like first page in like a month, organic, like wasn't doing any paid SEO, wasn't doing any paid ad spend, nothing. So we started getting calls like all over the country, like, hey, I didn't know you guys were a company. Like, where did you guys come from? And, I'm taking phone calls from the garage, like, we're trying to build one plunge. Like, yeah, cool. And so, and then where it came off, you mentioned Aubrey. Aubrey was like a huge part of our genesis. And he was our first like influencer. And so we saw him in a chest freezer. We launched in September of 2020. I think we saw him in a chest freezer in like late October or like November. And we just were like, hey man, how about we upgrade you? And he was like, just in the comments was like, if you guys are serious, like shoot me a message here. And so we shoot him a message and he's like, all right, come out next month, come set it up. And so we were like,
no way.
And it was our first unit we ever shipped. So we had never this was like our, bit of naiveness to what we were getting into was, we had been delivering in the back of Mike's van for 2 months, just hand delivering. Him and I show up at your house and we set it up because we were in Northern California. It was like,
are they packaged at this point?
No. So he just had this like van that he would go camping in and we just put the back down and we would just deliver a plunge. And so this was like our first 20 that we sold, And so then Aubrey's popping up and he's like, yeah, I'll come out. So we're like, shit, how do you ship one of these things? Like we don't come from that background. Like him and I are in like a service brick and mortar background. This is like product, like shipping logistics, but totally different. So anyways, we shipped that unit. It landed good, amazingly, because what was crazy is our next, then we started shipping across the country. And I don't know what the percentage was. It was high. Let's say our next 30% of our 40% of our plunges we shipped for the next 10 units all had this one part that broke during shipping just because we hadn't stress tested the unit. We got them all fixed over time, but it was I still look back to that. If that unit had shown up broken at Aubrey's house, it was a moment where it was we were getting the backing of, and Aubrey's been a great partner with us since. Anyways, these unique moments where it showed up in the garage. I remember at Aubrey's house and it's sitting there on the pallet. I'm like, I think it's here. I think it's good. I think we can set it up. And we set it up for him. And, but yeah, and then from there, it was just kind of, I think we're on to our 6th space and for a good 2.5 years, we've moved 5 times. So it's just been a rapid growth from day one.
Man, hyper growth, but that's cool because when I had Uriah Faber on, he was saying that you almost have to be delusional, like with your dream, where it really, whether there's no end goal or it just doesn't make sense, but that's what creates a story. And that's how people who do great things start, is they just go for it.
Totally.
And it's pretty cool that you touched on it, because you had like no background in this industry. You're not an engineer. You're not, I don't want to call you not an expert, but you may not be an expert in this sort of stuff. And you just kind of realized there was a little bit of a problem. How can I solve my own issues? And then, hey, you're like, if I'm experiencing this, maybe somebody else is experiencing what I'm experiencing. How can we help them?
Yeah,
I think kickstarted into something really cool.
I think you touched on it. It's like there's like a delusional, I frame it into like, you need to be confident enough in yourself, but you need to be naive enough into what you're getting into. And I remember that with the float spa. I remember even sitting down with Plunge, like, you know, Mike had pitched, and Mike is great at this. Mike's just like, you know, he's elite into just what's the next step? Like, let's not get ahead of our skis. Like, what do you just got to do next? Like, don't overthink this.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting down and talking to some people, because Mike had pitched me about the company. Like, hey, do you want to start selling? Like, let's do this together. And I had some other personal things going on, especially with COVID. And I was sitting down with some people. I was kind of like running it by them, which sometimes good, sometimes it's not best to go get everyone's opinion. But I'm kind of sitting there, and I remember people that knew a lot more about this space told me, like, you don't know, like the shipping piece kept coming up. Like, do you know how much like freight is a nightmare to deal with? And like, what do you know about freight and distribution and all this stuff? And I was like, I don't know anything. And I, you know, it was kind of like people were thinking about what actually the major hurdles in front, which were all absolutely real. But by not knowing those, like without actually knowing what I had to go through for those, I think it gets the momentum going. It's like we overthink what the hurdles are, and the hurdles are actually much smaller and much easier. Like, you know, it was less about like, we're just now figuring out freight. We're 2.5 years in, you know, and it's like, but we had a product that the world wanted. So it was like, that solved a lot of problems. We can, as long as the world wants what you got and there's an interest there, all those problems will get solved. So I think it's important not to get too caught up into the challenges that you're going to face. And I think that's more of we want to talk ourselves out of like something great. Like, I think it's a natural thing that we do.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to get really honest with ourselves. Like, am I talking myself out of this because I'm afraid of what I have to go through? Or do I genuinely not want to do this? And I think majority of the time it's that we're afraid of it. It takes some digging to get there. And I think that was, you know, what I went through at the beginning of starting Plunge. It was kind of like, I'm a little afraid of what I don't know. And then it was just to the side, and it's like, fuck it. Like, we'll figure this out. So that's been, yeah. And I think the key to it too, my learnings, is like, find a co-founder. Like, when you're starting like any business, like I've done it solo and I've done it with someone else. And it's just, I think it's important to have some understanding and ground rules prior if you're going to have a co-founder, you know, and that's making sure you guys have like similar aligned principally and ethically, and there's just ultimate trust, and then ultimately having different skill sets. I think, you know, if you nail those things, like you could go so far with a co-founder and a lot faster. You know, I think there's a common phrase of like, you can go fast solo, but far together. Like, I genuinely think if you have the right partner, you can go fast and farther with the right person.
You just said, it's so cool, because in life, you know, you touched on how the problems were bigger than they seem. It's like, I think about this all the time. I could lay in my bed and stress about X, Y, and Z, and it feels like the weight of the world is just on me. But then I sit at my desk right here and I get my pen and paper out and I write out how I need to handle this shit. And it doesn't give me any anxiety. So it's like, just put a little plan in place, put some effort, because a lot of our problems in life are pretty minuscule compared to, you know, what we're telling ourselves them to be like.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the time when stress happens, we create problems that aren't even there. It's just a natural thing. Like our mind spins out, and you like pen and paper. I think that's a great start. I don't love writing, but it does, like, the mind can encapsulate such a spectrum of things. Doing things like reading or writing, it just has to narrow everything down. Like you can only focus on so much when you're writing. So when you're writing, you can kind of weed out what was sitting there, what wasn't there, or what's not needed to be there. So it's like tackling that, just get something done. I think I was just listening to the Rogan Huberman podcast, and they were talking about that into like, and Huberman was actually talking about, like, on a physiological level, what was happening in the body. But it's basically like, when we have the biggest thing, sometimes just actually like cleaning our room. And he was talking it on like an actual like chemical level, what's happening there. But if we just go and like clean our room and like solve something, like that sends in some rush, like dopamine raises up there, and then focus and motivation improves. So you're actually it's an actual dump of dopamine in the body, and you're getting something done. And that's where momentum is. So it's like you said, pick up, like what is something you can actually get done. And it's not just a mental, it is a mental thing, but it's actually, a chemical that's being sent into the body by doing that. So I think, action is the cure. Like it's truly a lever within our body that can get us moving towards the actual thing we want to get to. So it's, don't get too caught up in the biggest thing in the future. Just do one thing, and that greases the wheel in a real way.
Focus on now. I want to hear, like, what did the first ever cold plunge look like compared to the ones that you're pumping out now?
It's very similar from the acrylic tub. So the white tub that you see, that is the same. We actually have, we have a couple different vendors now, but we buy from that official white tub from the same vendor, same factories. Everything else that goes on it has been completely upgraded. We've learned, I think we have as much data point as anyone out there in the world on what works from a cold therapy standpoint. Whether that's changing the bulkhead sizes that are in there by 1/4 inch, because you get a bigger stream of water coming through, which in turn changes the filtration, cutting some of the piping by 1/4 inch changes the pump, upgrading the, gallons per minute of how the flow rate is on that. The filter going from like a 1 micron filter to a 20 micron filter, understanding like it's actually, we don't want it to be catching as much as possible. We want better flow coming through it. So we have upgraded across the board into the unit itself. So it is, we actually had the original unit at the facility. And it's comical. It's comical, the difference between the first to whatever we're on to now.
So the first ones you're making out in Sierra Oaks out of Michael's garage, are you guys like running to Home Depot?
Yeah.
And grabbing shit like?
Yep, absolutely. We're going to Home Depot. There was the tub story is crazy. So the largest distributor of like freestanding bathtubs is out of, Woodland, California. We didn't know this. We just found this company, a fully integrated company with China and the US, has this, it just happens to be in our backyard, And so we had no place to store tubs. So we were able to drive to Woodland and just pick these up like one at a time. Now we're one of their biggest, we're their biggest customer by far. But we're starting out, we're just driving up with Mike in his van, and we're just grabbing these people are like, yeah, grab one. And we would do it. And this place is massive. So we were able to like have this where we could get tubs whenever we wanted. We could just drive 20, 30 minutes and go grab a tub. So we had those. And then it was like, just the pieces, a lot of Amazon ordering. We'd order, okay, cool, we need to build 3 this week. So we'd order the parts, and then Home Depot around the corner, I think that was an exit up 50 there.
Yeah, just on Howe Avenue.
Exactly. We'd go to Howe and run and grab that, and then and we just build. So it was more of the parts, the pieces, and a lot of stuff we were going obviously different countries, whether it's Mexico or China, there are some like specific, obviously everything's from there. It's more of like, how can we bypass the middleman, which is Amazon and, Home Depot and these places. And that was the game over time. And now we've built incredible relationships with our vendors and our partners, and really finding people as we've learned about, okay, cool, we need this type of pump. Cool. Let us create this pump with you. In turn, which I'm really excited on, like long term, like we will be releasing different generations of the Plunge, major upgrade, like just different types with the unit, which is fun. Like, keep evolving this, understanding what are like the, what people love about the Plunge, how to make it even better. So,
yep.
I think that's the excitement just across the industry, is like, this was a newer, it was a garage project, and now there's like newer players entering the space. It's like cold therapy is like, it's not going anywhere. It's only going to keep getting bigger. And as people enter in, it's just going to make the products better. It's going to make them, it's going to work more for the consumer.
But have you thought about how perfect timing this all was, with Dr. Huberman talking about deliberate cold exposure, Joe Rogan talking about cold exposure, guys like Aubrey and Rich Roll and Devin Levesque, and all these guys started to talk about it, and now your product's fallen in line at just the right time, and it just kick-started almost a whole movement.
It's not lost on me, the timing. I mean, there are factors that are, sometimes you just, whatever you want to call it, like things come together. I think we sensed it. We felt that it was coming. Did we know to what degree? Absolutely not. Like there was, and I think if we wait 6 more months, we try and perfect the product even better, we get lost behind a bit. We're not that company that enters in at the perfect time when there are opportunities to go to Rich Roll's house or Andrew Huberman's house and actually they're open to it. They're like, come on over, we're down, let's connect. And that was able to happen very early on. And I don't think that, if we wait that much longer, that's not happening. So, there are factors that I think are, you can't plan for. And the other piece I look at is you never know, we were kind of looking at each other at the beginning of while we weren't the first company to do this, we were kind of the first to do it and how we've done it at this price point, really being a front-facing consumer brand, D2C model, really going after the residential market. And we're just man, almost doubting, are we the guys, why? There's got to be other people, and you kind of question the timing, and it's, and I think it's an opportunity for everyone. It's yes, there are other things probably happening parallel, but someone's got to go do it. And, if you're questioning it, just do it. And I don't know if I'm articulating it that great, but someone's got to be first, or someone has to be early into it. And if you're looking around and it's not there, and I see the opportunity, you got one shot, and go do it. There are such unique windows in time that you have the sliver of and don't perfect it, just get there. If you sense that there's interest in this, perfection is the death of success. That will stop you. And just
I love that. Man. Okay, let's talk about getting cold. Okay, when was the last day that you missed? Not just a cold plunge, because some days you're traveling and you're not going to have access to it, but when was the last day you didn't, have cold exposure?
I actually got hit with a cold just within the last 2 weeks, and the most intense day I did not cold plunge. And I actually recommend this. If you're actually already sick, adding extra stress into the body, I don't think is beneficial. However, if you're teetering, if you're oh man, something might be coming on, I feel a little something could happen. I could get sick. I do think it's really beneficial to get cold. And that's where like adrenaline kicks in.
Yeah.
Adrenaline's a really good resilience tool. It builds those walls up. And that is what you're doing. You're getting cold. It's an adrenaline hit to the body. It's not cortisol, it's adrenaline. So, you know, and Huberman does talk about that as like adrenaline is a key factor, like maintaining some level of adrenaline. And there's a dance to that. You don't want to overdrive your system with adrenaline and get super fight or flight all the time, but have it. That's why we do breath work. Breath work is adrenaline into the body. So it's maintaining that level. So I think it's good kind of on the pre of getting sick. And then for me, I was super like, I was sick, didn't get in. It's like on a Saturday, woke up the next day and I just had this pounding headache. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to get in. Like, I feel like I'm kind of getting better, but I can't shake this like head situation. Got in 2 minutes. I came out, was just headache gone. Like, it is the ultimate buster. And I mean headaches from, you know, whether you're sick, whether you're a bit dehydrated, whether you're hungover, like get in the cold, you'll get that shot of adrenaline and that your headache, like I will not guarantee it's gone, but it is the greatest, it's your best opportunity to get rid of that headache. So back to your original question, I hadn't done it probably the first time, like, what is that, a week and a half ago or so? But every day, it's first thing, and I still always don't want to get in. So that doesn't change.
Oh, dude. I'll tell you what, like the hardest part about cold plunging to me, and I'd love to hear your piece, is going from my bed, because I do it first thing in the morning. I get in my cold shower first thing in the morning and having that conversation in my head, going from the bed to the shower. It's like every excuse is coming at me why I don't need to do it today. But if I could just get there, then okay, I can do it. I'm in, it's done. But just get in there is, fuck, it's hard sometimes.
It's hard. And that is the magical, you know, and there's actual like a body response, what's going on here, but that's the magic, is like the mind is saying, no, I don't want to do this, but you're delaying some level of, like you're kind of taking the more challenging route to get the bigger reward. And there is like true compounding interest. It's like, and that is the dopamine, what we're talking about. Like it raises your baseline dopamine levels. Like you are doing something that the body is signaling, no, we can excuse ourselves out of this. And you get in there and you get that. And then every single time, you know it, whether it's a shower or, you know, full body exposure, whatever you're doing, like you come out and you're like, I feel incredible.
Yeah.
And that doesn't change. No matter how often you do it every single day for 3 years like me, or you just started, like you're going to get that feeling. So I think everyone might say like, I can't do that. It's like, no, you want that. You want the thing that says I can't do it. And the other part with cold is, again, very few times can we manufacture like a true, authentic, stressful environment that's safe. Like usually you can't, you know, you play sports, that's a stressful environment you get into this situation. But most of the time in life, it's someone cutting you off. It's someone yelling at you.
Yep.
It's receiving a message that gets you worked up that you can't prep for. Like, but cold exposure is like, you're going to get that stressful impact, which is what we're looking for. You're getting the adrenaline, you're getting put into this like very intense situation, but it's controlled and it's safe and it's deliberate. And, you know, there's just few things that we can find in life and actually come out where there's not like this hangover effect to it. Like your body can regulate, you're actually going to feel much better afterward. You're not stuck in this like crazy fight or flight, stressed out situation. You're actually coming out calm, clear, full of endorphins, feeling great. And you're spending 2 to 3 minutes. It's a super small ROI. And it's a great ROI, but a super small amount of time that you actually have to put in to get those results.
What temperature do you set yours to?
I go to like 45 to 46 is like my consistent daily temperature.
I've seen people go down to 37, and obviously, you know, you've interacted with all the experts. What are they saying is kind of that sweet spot?
I lean towards like the actual individual, and research will say sub 60, you're getting benefits. into like what some of the studies have done, 55, you'll get benefits there. And that's still cold. Like for someone starting out, it's a great place to be. It comes to every body type is different. That's a factor. To me, it's like, here's what I would say. It would be like asking someone, what is the right weight for someone to improve their strength? It really matters on the individual. Like someone that hasn't worked out, I would say picking up that weight and doing 12 reps at something that makes you a little, fatigued by the end, that's your weight. Someone that's an ultimate bodybuilder, they're going to be doing a completely different weight, and they're all getting results. It's meeting them where they're at. And that's how cold is. You're dosing yourself in a way that meets your body. And I think there are cues you want to be looking for. And again, it is like weight training. Like sometimes you need to adjust the weight. Sometimes you need to change your body. While you're going to get these great results and these great benefits, sometimes you do need to adjust the temp. So for example, like I said, mine is usually set to 45, 46. It's kind of my sweet spot where I go. But then some days I go for 3 minutes max. It's usually my daily routine. 3 minutes in, out. Some days it's like, okay, you're kind of in this moment, like a kind of a pattern, like similar momentum. Let's switch it up. Let's go 5 minutes today. And I go 5 minutes, or I'll start to do some rounds, and I'll do, 1 minute plunge. I'll get out, I'll do some movement, and then I'll do 3 rounds of that and kind of shock my body. And it's just a different workout. It's like going from a HIIT workout to a CrossFit workout to a yoga class. They're all doing impacts on your body, and you need to change the workout a little. So on the temp wise, I mean, starting out, I always say the most general rule of thumb for me would be 55-ish degrees, 2 minutes, and get in for that and start there, and just don't worry about changing the time or the temp. Like you will naturally do that. Like you want to make sure you don't blow your system out. Like if you're trying to play the long game here, don't start at 39 degrees and then like fatigue yourself out or get too intense and you don't show up tomorrow. Like you want to find the temp and the time that you're going to keep showing up. And then you can find subtle cues. Like you can just start to get to know your body a little bit more. And, you want to get in, you want to get that, you want to get in and get that initial shock. Like that is an important feeling of like, your mind, as soon as you get in, being like, I want to get out. I don't like this. Like, that's a great signal. That is what you're wanting to do. That is all the things are starting to happen internally there. You're getting that kind of fight or flight, stressful reaction that's happening, which is key for the body. And then, it's usually 30 seconds up to a minute where you'll start to regulate in. Like, you will you stay with that breath, you will calm down, and you want to push through that initial window of like where you feel you are choosing to get out as opposed to the water's forcing you to get out. And that is the regulation. That is like a signal that you're sending to your body that I've adapted to a stressful situation. So, I'd say get a temperature that takes your breath away, get your breath controlled again to some consistent pattern, and get to a point that you feel like, okay, I'm not being forced out of this thing. And it's all great. Every time we get out of a cold plunge, it's we're like, fuck yeah, I finally get to get out. But get to that place that you feel you're more in choice of getting out of the plunge, and, nail those things, and temperature and time, those will just come over time. You'll start to play with that a little bit more.
If somebody's new to this, like what would you tell them the 3 to 4, biggest benefits from cold plunging are?
Biggest benefits. To me, and not to get too like kind of like, what does that mean? Like I would say like nervous system regulation. It's like, well, what does that mean? Okay. I think it's more like mood elevation. Like this is a great tool, whether you have depression to whether you just are looking to get more energy in your life and have an enhanced mood and a brighter outlook. Like that happens like across the board. So I for me, that is like number one. It's why I do it every single morning. Number two, I think it fits into this term resilience, like building the pattern of being able to like do like a really challenging thing Like there is like true benefits to what's going on there of like doing that, like having a consistent pattern and getting that win of like from a mental standpoint, like it creates true momentum in your life. And, you know, that varies for each person, but I think you incorporate, I will guarantee this. I would guarantee it. You incorporate a 2 to 3 minute cold plunge in your morning, every single morning, like you will have a far more enhanced life than if you didn't. And that will show up in a lot of different ways. That'll show up in the way that you feel. It'll show up into the impact that you're having. It'll show up to who you are in the world, of how you're showing up to the people around you. Like, I just guarantee it. Like, you do it and you commit to it. Like, it's very simple. It's very straightforward. The challenge is like doing it. And I get it. It's not a simple thing. This isn't just like taking a breath. It's a thing that you have to actually get uncomfortable doing. So I think that is like the resilience and how we show up in the world. I think, you know, and then the other ones that kind of come into it, I think depends on who you are and what you're looking for. You know, there's immunity system in, you know, enhancement, increasing your white blood cell count. There is, you know, increasing metabolism. That's a really cool study that just came out from Dr. Susanna Soyberg and showing that, you know, and there's a lot of benefits to that, not just losing weight, but, you know, having increased metabolism is, you know, it's actually going to be energy production and, you know, overall metabolic health. Like those are factors that go into that. Yeah. I mean, I think those to me are like why I'm consistently getting into it. Yeah. And we hear it. Well,
I mean, for me, sometimes.
Go ahead.
What did you say?
I was going to say, and we hear like,
what were you going to?
And it varies into who we like from our customer base, what we hear. You know, if you have an autoimmune disorder, we hear that like is like within a week, like a lot of the people with like MS or, you know, some autoimmune type, they get in and there's a regulation, and it's usually a nervous system issue going on there. So they get in there, and so they're seeing improvements there. You know, sleep enhancement, massive one. So, and, you know, sleep's like, you know, you talk about benefits, like sleep's actually where we're getting the muscle. That's where muscle's growing. Working out is where our muscle is being broken down. But then the sleep is actually muscle growth. And if we can improve our sleep time, getting into these more REM or very deep sleep windows, that's where cognitive repair goes on, and that's where muscle growth goes on. So, you know, cold plunging people are utilizing it even like in short doses before sleep, where you get in for, as opposed to doing like a 3-minute plunge, just get in for 45 seconds, lower that core body temperature, because usually you want to be around that 68 degree, like whatever the core body temp, you want it to lower about 2 degrees usually for you to get into those deeper sleeps. And that's where it's not about how many hours you lay in bed. It's about how many hours you are in REM or you are in this delta deep sleep state. Well, you need to get your core body temperature down. Well, cold plunging is this tool that you can accelerate that process, get in a little more chilled out, like your body truly chilled down a bit, accelerate sleep, improve, you know, so we're seeing it massively in like bodybuilding, or like the CrossFit space is incredible. CrossFit's not about how much you can work out. It's truly how fast you can recover. And, you know, and that's other benefits that we're seeing.
Because the first thing in the day when I started, it's a catalyst for a great day. And you've touched on it, mental and physical. For me, it's mental. It's continuing to do it every day, and especially the days that I don't want to do it. And so it's focus. It's helping me focus on my breath when I'm doing it. It's helping me focus on just being intentional. So that kickstarts the day with a small win already. And I think it's more than a small win. It's actually a big win because it's pretty damn hard. But then the physical components of it, and I couple it with sauna and red light therapy almost every day. So I know it's a combination of all three of those, but it helps so much with inflammation in my sleep. And I can look back on my life on the times when I wasn't doing cold therapy, wasn't doing saunas and whatnot, and I can confidently say that my sleep and recovery was so much worse than it is now. So I don't want to say I pinpoint it just to the cold or just to the sauna. I know it's a combination of both and some lifestyle, choices, but it's elevated all aspects of my performance and recovery.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's definitely it's a supplement to a lot of these different things. It's not the silver bullet, but it's ripples in all of these categories that you just mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. Last thing before we cap it all off, I mean, you're now hanging around and interacting and speaking with some of the smartest dudes in the world. You got Huberman, Dr. Roger Patrick, I even saw Jake Paul using it and whatnot, some of these really, really cool people. So they must be teaching you other things about life and health and how to optimize kind of who we are as people. And I wanted to just ask you, is there anything you can share with me and all the listeners about some of the lessons and learnings you've taken away from these other individuals that you've helped out with the cold plunge?
Man, the more I'm around them, it's like I just see how normal people are. Like, and I mean that in a sense that there's no extreme superpower. It's just doing the thing. Like, they're the ones that we are out there witnessing that we're like in awe of. The only difference is they're just in action of it. Like, there's very few. Again, there are some geniuses that just have a some extra level of they're wired a little differently, and that there are some of those out there. But majority that I get around, it's they're just in action and they're just doing the thing. And it's not some profound, crazy piece. And the more I get around them, it's like it's less of a profound thing that I'm witnessing. It's just more of action and consistency. And that's it. Like that is, and it's sometimes it's a little disappointing, and sometimes it's a little, I view it as like very exciting. Because it's like, oh, this is just the thing. Just like, you got to keep showing up, and you got to stay consistent and be willing to keep tackling the next challenge that comes forward. Yeah, I think that's one thing that I've really witnessed over the last like year and a half, 2 years being around some of these people.
Well, it's relatable for everyone, and it also gives everyone else confidence that, hey, you can do it too. But like you said, it's action, taking a step forward, and it's also what we can draw back on earlier in the conversation is not waiting, whether it be the perfect time or maybe the perfect season in your life to do something. It's going for it.
And to piggyback on that, it's like, man, kindness and just like being a good person, like, fully matters. Like, these the people that I really succeed, or that I see succeed, and I guess it's also people that I'm more driven to be around. They're just playing such a longer game. Like, it's not the short side. It's like truly relationship. And I think that's what I'm driven by right now is win-win relationships. So it makes sense. But they're just, it's a long game. It's not this short-sighted, how do we get a short win? How do we get a win in the immediate? It's like just being kind, doing the right thing. And that I think comes from knowing yourself more, but it's not overly complicated. And I think that's really exciting is it's like nothing, it's all within us. Like, truly, like, we have it and we're all capable of doing great things. And, where you're at now. And I think we overplay what we can do in like a week or a month. And then we underplay what's like a year to 3 years, like what is capable. And it's like dancing in those two spots. Like, your life, if you just commit to something in like 6 months, it can be in a totally different direction. If you just commit to something and work towards that every single day, like it's a very simple equation. And I see that as a very common ingredient into all these successful people I've gotten the opportunity to be around.
Perfect way to end. And I want to keep this under an hour because I know how busy you are. You're down in San Diego. Probably have a huge agenda, but what you're doing, what the brand's doing, the community that you're building, and the amount of lives that you're changing is pretty damn inspiring. And so if you hear it a lot or you don't hear it enough, I wanted to remind you that it's very cool. And it's inspiring me to create my own community of like-minded people and trying to inspire as many people as possible to go chase their dreams. So I want to say I appreciate you more than you know.
Dude, really appreciate you saying that. I don't take that for granted, and Yeah, genuinely do appreciate that.
Well, when I'm back in SAC, we'll have to link up.
Dude, absolutely. We got to get you up to come up to HQ when you're up there.
100%. I'll take advantage of that any day. So
Cool.
enjoy, man. I'll talk to you very soon.
Cool. Take care, brother.